Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Versi Adams, exemplar Global Certified AS9100 ISO 9001 Auditor. What I'd like to do with you today is to share with you my top 10 audit findings in hopes that you can avoid those same audit findings during your internal audits and most importantly, your external audits. So without any further delay, let's get going. So my first audit finding is in the area of measurement instrument calibration. So measuring instrument calibration. So as the standard states in clause 7.1.5.2c, measurement traceability, when measurement traceability is a requirement or is considered by the organization to be an essential part of providing confidence in the validity of measurement instruments, measuring equipment shall be identified in order to determine its status. So these are two kind of basic calibration status labels that I see during audits. Some of them have a little bit more information, but typically they're going to have about this same amount of information. So the one on the left here is a calibration status label for an instrument that is subject to calibration, subject to periodic calibration. You have the person responsible for calibration, you have their initials there, you have the date of the calibration, and you have the due date for the next calibration. Okay, and then to the right, we have a for reference only label. Basically says not calibrated, for reference only. So that label will be on a measuring instrument that is not subject to calibration because that instrument is not used to verify product conformance. It's used, like it says, for reference only. Now the label to the left is a label that identifies the current status of the instrument, the subject instrument. So what I'm finding during the audits is when I go out into production area and I start looking at measuring instruments, start sampling instruments and picking them up, looking at the labels, what I find often is the calibration due date has passed. So, like today is April 19th, and I'll look at an instrument that was due in February of this year, which means that two things. The instrument was not calibrated by the due date, or it was calibrated, but the calibration status label was not updated with a new label. Okay. The other instance that I'm often finding is I'll go out into production and I will not see either a calibration label or I will not see a for reference only on a measuring instrument such as a micrometer, a caliper, a dial indicator, a height gauge, something like that. And that's no good. And the other thing that I will find is I'll go out and I'll see someone using a measuring instrument that's labeled for reference only, but after further discussion with the auditee, I find out that for reference only label that's attached to that measuring instrument, I'll find out that measuring instrument is actually being used to verify product conformance, which is not good. So those three examples are things that I commonly see when I'm auditing the measurement instrument calibration process. Okay. The next one, the quality policy. So as it states in the standard under section 5.2.2b(c), communicating the quality policy shall be communicated, understood, and applied within the organization and can be available to relevant parties as appropriate. Okay, so here's an example of a quality policy. Most quality policies are very similar because they include the four items that are specifically stated in the standard that need to be included in your quality policy. But what I'm finding a couple of things. I'm finding out that employees, internal interested parties, are not aware of the quality policy. And the other thing I'm finding is that they don't understand the quality policy, so they cannot explain it to me in their own words. And then I always ask them, I look at the quality policy and I say, what does that mean to you? And I get a lot of different answers, but I often find that the person, you know, describing the quality policy to me does not really know how to translate that to in his own words, what that means to him, how that affects his job, his or her job. And the other thing is I'm finding out, obviously, as I stated earlier, is that the employees are not even aware of the quality policy. I said, "Are you aware of the quality policy?" And they're like, yeah, it's that, I think it's the about us, producing good parts and shipping them out to the customer on time. But that's not really what we're looking for. What we're looking for as auditors is we're looking to see that you're aware of the quality policy. So what I want to see is that you can basically point to it. Where is it at? Is it on the wall? Is it in the break room? Is it out in the shipping area? Is it in the lobby? Is it in your department? Is it mounted posted next to a machine? It's kind of funny, but I've even seen the quality policy in the restroom. But so the main thing is that I'm finding along the issues of quality policies is that the employees are not aware of it, and that the employees who are aware of it cannot explain it, how it relates to them in terms of their own job. Okay, so that's another one. So the next one is infrastructure. So 7.1.3, the organization shall determine, provide, and maintain the infrastructure necessary for the operation of its processes and to achieve conformity of products and services. So throughout your organization, you have very important process equipment that enables you to perform your job. In this example, this is a preventive maintenance work plan for a Haas mill, and it defines the critical task, the frequencies, the dates that task needs to be performed, and the initials of the person performing that maintenance task. So what I'm finding what I'm often finding is that these preventive maintenance work plans are not up to date, meaning they don't have sign-offs for the tasks according to the frequencies that are indicated. So in this case, you see weekly, you see SA, which means semi-annual, and you see A, which means annual. So what I'm finding is that there will be weekly tasks that are not being performed per the schedule as it states weekly. And I often sometimes find semi-annual or monthly tasks that are not being performed on time. So if you have, you should anyway, have maintenance work plans, maintenance schedules for your key process equipment, whatever the tasks are that you define in terms of maintenance and the frequencies, you need to make sure that they are done and that they are signed off on the work plan or a preventive maintenance work plan or a preventive maintenance schedule, whatever you may call it. But make sure they're done and they're signed off. And another thing that I often find is I'll find out that the task has actually been performed per the frequency that's defined, but again, the machinist or the operator does not sign it off. He's behind on sign-offs, which, it's kind of surprising to me, because if you're going to perform the maintenance task, the next step is to sign it off before you go on and do whatever else you have to do that day. So again, make sure that your preventive maintenance work plans, work schedules are signed off as required, as stated on the work plan or work preventive maintenance work schedule. Okay. Next item, customer satisfaction. So in the standard 9.1.2, it states the organization shall monitor customers' perceptions of the degree to which their needs and expectations have been fulfilled. The organization shall determine the methods for obtaining, monitoring, and reviewing this information. So the standard doesn't tell you how, what you should do as far as your customer satisfaction monitoring. It just states that you have to have some type of method to monitor customer satisfaction. You decide how, but you just need to do it and be able to show objective evidence that it's being done. In this example, this is a customer satisfaction survey scorecard that a client of mine sends out quarterly to their customers, and they grade them on these 4 categories: quality, on-time delivery, lead time, and responsiveness. And as you can see, the scorecard measures that there's a criteria, and based on if they're meeting the criteria, they get awarded a certain amount of points or 0 points. So this is a one simple one that that you can incorporate if you don't have a method to document customer satisfaction monitoring. Okay. Another one is this customer feedback log. So what this basically does is when the supplier receives feedback from the customer, whether it's positive or negative, it's entered into this log, and the summary of the feedback is entered here where it says description of feedback. And then the customer service representative who received it, if there's any actions required, if there was a supplier corrective action issued as a result of that feedback, the SCAR number if applicable, the status of the actions to respond to the feedback, and then the date that feedback response was closed. So this is another method that you can use to show that you are in fact monitoring customer feedback, and that you're monitoring the degree to which the needs and expectations that are stated by the customer have been fulfilled. So again, this is one of 2 ways. You can get inventive, but I know for a fact that oftentimes when you send out customer surveys, it's hard to get a high response because customers just typically don't like to fill out surveys. It's kind of like when you get the survey in your email from Amazon or from DoorDash or something like that. Oftentimes, if it's lengthy, it takes too much time. For me, if it takes over 5 minutes, I don't like to fill them out. I want something that's very quick and easy to fill out. Okay, so again, think about this as far as your method and the documentation to show that you are monitoring customer satisfaction. Okay, next one, competence. So in 7.2 of the standard, the organization shall A, determine the necessary competence of persons doing work under its control that affects the performance and effectiveness of the quality management system. B, ensure that these persons are competent on the basis of appropriate education, training, or experience. C, where applicable, take actions to acquire the necessary competence and evaluate the effectiveness of the actions taken. And then D, retain appropriate documented information as evidence of competence. So when you train someone within your organization to a specific procedure, work instruction, form, you need to have a record that shows that that person was in fact trained. And this is a very simple employee training record that you see here. It basically has the employee name, their title, the date of the training, the subject of the training, an area for a description of the training. And it goes on and gives you a area for results of employees' training. Was it satisfactory? Or was it not? And then last but not least, this is very important, training effectiveness verification. So I almost always will write a finding in this area for training effectiveness verification, because what the auditee is doing, I'm finding, is they're performing the training, they're documenting it on their training record, but where are they verifying the effectiveness of the training? So you don't just train somebody and then leave it at that and let them go and say they're trained. I don't have to worry about them any longer. You have to verify the effectiveness of that training. And there's a couple of ways to do that. The one I see a lot often is as there's a quiz or an exam, test, whatever, issued sometime shortly after the training has occurred, and the employee is required to have a score of 80 or 90 or whatever the organization determines in order for the training to be signed off as being effective. Another method is after the training has occurred, that employee is observed performing their work for a short period of time, 2-3 weeks after that the training has been completed. And if there's no non-conformances, no errors with their training, then they sign it off on that date, 2 or 3, 4 weeks after the training has occurred. So you want to do something like that, because if you don't do anything like that, you're going to get a finding in the area of training effectiveness verification, because the standard is very clear on that. Also, when it comes to the competence, like it says here in A, determine the necessary competence a person is doing work under its control that affects performance and effectiveness of the quality management system. So in this example, this is an employee training plan. So it's based on this employee's position within the organization, and it's defined based on his position within the organization. It's defined the 8 items, roughly 8 or 9 items, topics that person needs to be trained to. And it shows you the status, the trainer, the due date for that training topic, and then the status of that, whether it's in progress or it's been completed, and it has a sign off from the trainer, and then it has a date schedule for the next training, because you don't just train someone once. You have to come back and retrain them to make sure that person has not developed some bad habits, and that person, you want to verify that person is still performing the work the way it's stated in the specific document. Okay, so make sure that you are performing your training and you're documenting it on a training record. However simple you want to make that training record, it's entirely up to you. But the key thing, do not forget that you have to verify training effectiveness. Okay, if you don't do that, then you're going to get a finding on that. And the other thing is that you need to define the necessary training based on that person's position. In this example, like I said here, the training plan. Okay, all right. So let's go to the next item. So management review. So management review has a lot of inputs. Management reviews typically can take 1 hour up to 3 or 4 hours, depending on the size of the organization and depending on how much people talk. So this is specifically right from the standard. The management review requirements 9.3.2. The management review shall be planned and carried out taking into consideration A, the status of actions from previous management reviews. B, changes in external and external issues that are relevant to the quality management system. C, information on the performance and effectiveness of the quality management system, including trends in customer satisfaction and feedback from relevant interested parties, the extent to which quality objectives have been met, process performance and conformity of products and services, nonconformities and corrective actions, monitoring and measurement results, audit results, the performance of external providers, and last but not least, on-time delivery. Okay, so what I'm finding is very easy to explain, is that all of these inputs are not captured in the management review meeting minutes. So if you don't have a form, such as an agenda with an area for you to record the discussions on each of these topics, and they're not recorded in those minutes or not documented, then your management review is going to have findings. So you need to make sure that every one of these inputs that you see here are discussed during the management review, and there is an output, meaning that you have a summary of the discussions in your management review meeting minutes for each of these items. If not, then you're going to have some findings. And another area of management review that I'm often finding is that in the management review procedure itself, it may state that the management review is supposed to be performed quarterly or semi-annually, like twice a year. But what I'm finding is the management review is not being performed as at the intervals that are stated in the management review procedure. So in your management review procedure, if you say that you do the management review twice a year, make sure you do it and make sure it's documented in terms of the minutes. If you say you're doing it quarterly, again, make sure you're performing your management review meeting quarterly again, and then it's documented. Okay, otherwise you're going to be looking at findings in that area. Okay, actions to address risk. 6.1.1. When planning for the quality management system, the organization shall consider the issues referred to in 4.1 and the requirements referred to in 4.2 and determine the risk and opportunities that need to be addressed. There are several ways that you can do this. You can make it very simple, or you can make it very complicated. But the key thing that the standard wants to see is that you're addressing operational risk within your quality management system where it's applicable. Okay. In this example, this is a risk register that this organization has put together that identifies their key processes, the risks that are associated with those key processes, the likelihood of those risks occurring, and if any previous occurrences have occurred. And what they have done is they have a formula in there based on there's a drop-down menus based on the likelihood in previous occurrences. It's going to give them a probability rating, and then they act on that probability rating according to their internal criteria. Okay. Another one is the PFMEA, which is process failure mode and effect analysis, that several of you who are listening right now are probably familiar with this. You define the process, you define the potential failure mode, you define the effect of that failure, you identify potential causes of that failure, and then you look at your current process controls to address that risk. And then what the PFMEA does is that you score according to the severity, occurrence, and detection, and there's a criteria that you set for that. And then the output of that is an RPN, which is a risk priority number. So this is another type of risk assessment, risk analysis tool that you can be using. So the key thing is that you need to define your risk management tool, analysis tool, and make sure it's documented. So what I'm often finding is there is no defined method from the auditee in terms of risk analysis and risk mitigation. And if you don't have that, then that's a finding because it basically violates the requirement in the standard under 6.1.1. Okay. The next item I want to talk about is control of non-conforming outputs. 8.7.1. The organization shall ensure that outputs that do not conform to their requirements are identified and controlled to prevent their unintended use or delivery. In these examples here, you see this is a typical non-conforming material label, which you fill out the information, you attach it to the product that's non-conforming or to the package that contains the non-conforming parts, and then you contain it, whether you contain it in a cage, an MRB cage, similar to the one to the right, MRB cage, a shelf, a room, a cabinet, whatever. But the key thing is that non-conforming outputs need to be identified. If they're not, okay, so control of non-conforming outputs. 8.7.1. The organization shall ensure that outputs that do not conform to their requirements. Thanks, Coco. Okay, so control of non-conforming outputs. 8.7.1. The organization shall ensure that outputs that do not conform to their requirements are identified and controlled to prevent their unintended use or delivery. So typically you're going to you want to identify those parts with non-conforming parts or product with a non-conforming label. This is the typical one that I see. You can buy it online at Uline and other places. And it has the information, the key information that you need to fill out as far as describing the non-conformity. The part number, the part name, serial number if applicable, the customer, your PO, the quantity, and the reason for the rejection, the inspector, and then the date. So what you want to do on all non-conforming product, you need to identify it with a non-conforming product label. And if you're using an ERP system that prints out a non-conformance report or a DMR, defective material report, you can identify with a copy of that report attached to the product. And then from there, you need to quarantine that product, contain it. So by placing it in an MRB cage or room, a shelf or a cabinet, you're containing it, and on top of that, you're identifying it with the non-conforming product label or the DMR or the NCR attached to the product. So what I'm finding often is that's not happening. I'll go in to a facility and I'll walk around production area and I find out there's non-conforming product right at the work cell, and it's basically commingled with good product. There's no positive identification on there on the parts. They're not in a separate box. They're not labeled. I mean, it's not identified. So that's an issue, because you need to identify those non-conforming products to prevent unintended use or delivery to the customer. And so again, this is something that I'm finding. And then also what I will also find is when I go into and look at their MRB cage, they'll have several different types of product in the MRB cage, but they're not identified with a non-conforming label or an NCR or a DMR. Again, so yeah, the product may be contained in the MRB cage, but you have to identify it. We need to know what's wrong with the product, why it's in the cage, reference numbers, how many, and all that. So we need to identify the product when it goes into the MRB cage, the room, the shelf, the cabinet, wherever you are housing your non-conforming product. Okay, if you don't do that, that's going to be a finding, and that's, again, like I say, that's typically where I'm finding these issues in the area of 8.71, control of non-conforming outputs. Okay, the next item, internal audits. So 9.2.2, the organization shall plan, establish, and implement and maintain an audit program, including the frequency, methods, responsibilities, planning requirements, and reporting, which shall take into consideration the importance of the processes concerned, changes affecting the organization, and the results of previous audits. So in this example, this is an internal audit schedule, and basically it's a snippet from it, but it shows in this example there is a process referred to as sales and customer service, and then there's another process which is the production process, which has several related processes within the key process of production. And again, and the same thing with sales and customer service. They have customer requirements review, customer satisfaction, and customer property is identified as subcomponents of the key process, which is sales and customer service. And then we have the ISO AS9100 clause, the auditor, the schedule. In this case, you can see an AWF means that the process was audited with findings, AUD, audited and closed with no findings, and SCH means it's scheduled. So this is a kind of a simple but to the point audit schedule. It shows that you've identified your processes by process and related sub-processes, and that audits are scheduled. So oftentimes I will not find anything like that at all. I'll go in there to the organization and they won't have a defined audit schedule, because it says in the standard that audits need to be planned. And how do we plan them? We schedule them. And how do we show that we've scheduled them? We have an audit schedule. So that's what we need. The other thing that I'm finding is there may be an audit schedule posted, but there are not audits performed to support that. The audit schedule may show that there was an audit, there was a several audits scheduled in March, but then when we go to look at audit reports from March, there are no audit reports, so they're not keeping up with the schedule. Okay, so make sure you have that audit schedule in place and that the frequencies are defined, the processes are defined, and that the audits are being performed according to your schedule. Okay? Okay, so we're at the very last finding number 10, which is in the area of quality objectives. So as the standard states in 6.2.1, the organization shall establish quality objectives at relevant functions, levels, and processes needed for the quality management system. The quality objectives shall be consistent with the quality policy, be measurable, take into account the applicable requirements, be relevant to the conformity of products and services and to the enhancement of customer satisfaction, be monitored, be communicated, be updated as appropriate, and the organization shall maintain documented information on the quality objectives. Okay, so this is an example of a quality objective. So basically it is measurable, as it's stated in 6.21b, should be measurable. It's measured in percentage, and it's measured over a month period of time. So they monitor the quality objective for customer on-time delivery on a monthly basis, and they update the quality objective every month. So as applicable to 6.21g, be updated as appropriate. Okay, another one we have here is a quality objective on customer quality. Again, it's measurable, it's monitored on a monthly basis and updated. As you can see, it's updated through June. Another one, very similar, again, measurable. We're measuring supplier on-time delivery in this case, we're measuring supplier on-time delivery, and the goal is 95%. And the actual is represented by the blue line and is measured on a monthly basis and updated. Again, in this case, it's updated through June. And one more I have for you is supplier deliveries without an RMA or rejection. So it's basically the same as customer quality, except you're measuring the quality of delivered products to you from your suppliers. And then again, in this example, this one is a 95% the goal, and the actual is shown by the gray line, and it's updated monthly, and it's updated through June. So what I'm finding when I look at the quality objectives, I'm finding a few things wrong. The one that's really obvious is 6.21b, measurable, be measurable. What I'm finding is I'm seeing organizations with quality objectives that just state the quality objective is to deliver product to the customer on time. The quality objective is to deliver product to the customer that meets their expectations. But that's not measurable. You have to have a percentage or a count of something, whether you're measuring customer quality in DPPM or QPPM, or you're measuring it as a percentage. It needs to be measurable. So that's what I'm finding oftentimes, that the quality objective is stated, but there is no measure of the performance of that quality objective. Okay. Another issue that I'm finding often is 6.21f. They need to be communicated. And what I'm seeing is that the quality objectives are not posted anywhere throughout the manufacturing facility or even in the quality lab or in the lobby. They're not posted so that the interested parties, which are the internal interested parties, in this case, the employees, are not aware of what the quality objectives are and what the performance is to those quality objectives. So they need to be communicated. And the best way to communicate that is to post them as you update them monthly, paper copy, or you can have what I often see is I'll see a large screen a television, 55 inch, 65 inch, with a PowerPoint for each quality objective rotating on a time basis, like every 30 seconds. So you can do it that way as well, but that fulfills the requirement for communicating the quality objectives. Okay, and another one that I'm finding is oftentimes, say we're in September, I'm walking around the facility and I'm looking at quality objectives that are posted, and we're in the month of September, but the quality objectives were last updated in June. So there's no July and there's no August. So again, as B states, 6.21B, be updated as appropriate. In this case, appropriate is on the monthly basis because the organization has stated that they will update the quality objectives on a monthly basis, because you can see it here in the chart. Okay, so make sure that you are in fact doing these. Make sure that your quality objectives are measurable, that they're monitored, that you definitely are monitoring the performance of those quality objectives. You're updating them as appropriate. And one important thing I want to add, that if you're not hitting your quality objective goal in any of the given months, you need to be initiating internal corrective action to investigate why you're not hitting your targets, because you're setting a quality objective for a reason. And if you're not hitting the quality objective, then it's going to be affecting your quality management system. It's going to affect your quality management system because you set the quality objectives for a reason. So make sure that if you are not hitting a quality objective, whatever the quality objective is, if you're not hitting the goal in any given month or whatever the time period is, whether it's quarterly or semi-annually, make sure you're initiating you're initiating a corrective action. If you're not, then you're going to get a finding. 9 times out of 10, you will get a finding in that area. Okay?